DDG episode 160. My name is Dave Hunt, and I'm joined by Michael Swick.
Dave, 160. We're still going. Look at that. Still recording.
Such a dick. All right, yeah. We are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly podcast that posts every Thursday. We do post every Thursday. We don't record consistently, but we post every Thursday, 6 a.m. Eastern Time on podcast services throughout the internet. So you can subscribe and download our episodes there, as well as leave us a review on any of the services that you are able to do so. That is super, super helpful. Sharing the show as well is great. So, retweets on Twitter help. Just don't retweet the stuff when we say Twitch because, well, I don't know. Maybe do that so that we get banned, so that maybe people pay attention to us, but then we'd be banned, so I don't know if they would be paying attention to us.
It's so hard to keep up with Twitter rules because it's just like a crazy man tweets every once in a while, and he's like, today this is the thing that you need to follow, and then the next day he's like, I never said that. So we're still on.
It's crazy to think. Yeah, it's crazy to think in 2023 the most stable social media platform, aside from I would say TikTok, is possibly Facebook now.
Yeah, I mean the old people have been keeping it warm for the last 15 years, so it's still going. But it's scary. We'll see what happens with Twitter when it just vanishes out of nowhere one day. But so far, it's still going. That $40 million investment is keeping the lights on over there.
Full disclosure, I am having a little bit of audio issues. I'm not really sure what's going on. We had to use the Twitch audio last week, and this week it still sounds like it's being a little temperamental. So, because my wife just told me I sound staticky. So we will see what this sounds like. So if it doesn't sound on par of what our audio levels have been lately, I apologize. I'm working out some kinks still in 2023. Apparently my new PC's a little funky. So
just a little.
There are a bunch of links in the show notes for you to check us out. Like I said, we do live stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/digitaldaysgaming, where apparently the podcast sounds better than even my direct recording. So we'll see how that ends up, shaking out today. But if you have Amazon account, if you have Amazon Prime, you can link it to your Twitch account and get Prime Gaming. You get a bunch of free gaming stuff, lots of skins, battle pass packs, season passes, loot boxes, if those are even still a thing. As well as you get a free subscription to a Twitch streamer of your choice. So if you want to use that on us, that is super, super helpful. If you don't, please use it on somebody and just don't let it go to waste. You should be able to subscribe on mobile platforms as well. So even if we're not recording or we're not live and you are thinking and you're listening to this and you want to switch off your podcast app and open up Twitch really quick, search Digital Days Gaming and hit subscribe. That would be awesome. So we don't have to be live for you to do that. All right. So we actually got a little bit of news coming into 2023, a little earlier than anticipated as people are coming back to work from their holiday breaks. And I'm going to throw it over to Michael.
Yeah, so CES happened last week. I always forget CES is at the beginning of the year when no one's really paying attention to things. But Sony had a presentation. Nothing crazy from that presentation. They talked a little bit more about PSVR, but they did drop the information that the PS5 has sold over 30 million units worldwide. So it is selling pretty well. They do have a goal for this fiscal year, which ends in March, to push 18 million consoles, and they're currently 7 million away from that goal. So they're expecting the supply to be readily available, so then they can hit their goals. And there's been a lot of reports of people going into stores and seeing PlayStations on shelves. So it seems like we might be almost out of the chip shortage drama as consoles become readily available. But yeah, 30 million consoles sold is pretty big for PlayStation right now, especially coming out of the pandemic, which slowed them down significantly.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge number. I think what I saw a little bit is it's on par or on pace with PS4's trend.
Yeah, so they had what they're calling their best month ever in December. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, depending on when you look at the graphs, it's been on pace or behind the PS4, but it seems like with that last month of sales, it's now back to being on pace, if not better, than PS4.
Yeah, I mean, obviously God of War Ragnarok, even being a PS4 title as well, I think it's getting to the point where people are like, I really want to play that on a PS5, and they were waiting, and then you had a couple things come out, and you started getting up to 3, 4, maybe 5 games. Like I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about Forbidden West, Ragnarok, Ratchet and Clank, and
Gran Turismo.
There was something. Yeah, but there was something else. I you know me, I have a love-hate relationship. I understand that racing games carry units and sell units and stuff like that, but I just don't think they make people buy consoles. That's just my opinion. They always come out when consoles come out, but I just don't think that they make people buy consoles.
And I think because they always come out when consoles come out shows you that people do buy those games for consoles.
Right. It's just... almost everybody that I talk to goes, yeah, that game looks really cool, but I don't play racing games. Like that's like it's just.
And the people that buy racing games like Gran Turismo, that's the only game they might buy.
Yeah, they don't buy Ragnarok. Yeah. So, but there was something else that came out. Miles Morales. That's what I was kind of going. Like as you're starting to get a library of even cross-generational games, but that are statistically and factually looking better on the PS5 and running better on the PS5 is warrant people to do that and to upgrade. So I think that was we're definitely seeing that, as well as even like a former coworker of mine was able to get his hands on one with very little effort within the last week or two. So the more readily available they are, obviously the more that they're going to sell at a faster rate. So I actually honestly expect next year to be a very good year for both consoles, to be a very good unit selling for both systems. I feel on the heels of whether Starfield coming out, that I truly think will be a system mover for Xbox, and then on top of a much more robust PS5 library. Yeah,
especially the way Sony's hitting with the third-party partnerships in the beginning of the year, and then close out the year with Spider-Man. Like that's going to be huge.
Because there is a lot. I when I say that, I don't know a lot of people that I feel are waiting. We're waiting for Gran Turismo, or we're getting a PS5 for Gran Turismo. I think there are legitimately a lot of people that are waiting for Final Fantasy 16 to get a PS5.
Yeah, I mean that's usually how the Final Fantasy games go. Like they release one, maybe two a generation, and it's a big deal when they come out. And no matter what 16 ends up coming out as, in terms of good or bad, it's going to be a system mover for PlayStation.
And much like I also, at the same caveat, I feel like Street Fighter 6 will also do the same thing for both consoles.
Yeah, it could potentially do well, especially if it, I believe they already said crossplay is a thing for that, but it could end up being pretty big for them. There's a lot of stuff that could definitely like move the needle for both companies. And then you have like unknowns in terms of just like Hogwarts Legacy could be a system seller for the Harry Potter people, especially they'll have to wait if you're on PS4.
That's the thing. Like that's the part that's like super interesting. I really want to see like some we don't talk about them in detail. Like sometimes we talk about them if they're a big deal, but I'd be really curious to see NPD in February and in March for Hogwarts Legacy, like where it charts and how it charts.
Well, especially because it's topping the Steam
coming
chart
out in 1 month
right now as a pre-order.
Yeah, right. So you get Steam, PS5, and Xbox Series in February, and then I think you get PS4 and Xbox One in April, and then you get Switch like in May.
Yeah.
So I'll be very curious, like how NPD tracks that, because like then we'll see, like we know there's 30 million PS5s, but if it doesn't chart super well in February, which it probably already will because of Steam sales, and then it still charts really well in April, it could be a combination of a slow burn sell, word of mouth sell for next gen consoles, as well as coming out on the platforms that have more units readily out there and available.
Unless it reviews really terrible in February, and then it won't matter when it comes out in April and May or June, whenever the Switch one comes out. So, but if it reviews well, we're going to see it spike up potentially 2 more times this year, a month or two apart. So
I don't see this game running well on the Switch, but
no, and I don't think they're doing a cloud version either. So I don't know exactly how that's going to look. But it still will sell on the Switch because it's a Switch.
Sorry, Chandler, love you. I don't think your game can run a Switch.
Yeah, but like it will sell because the Switch does well, and Harry Potter is a big franchise still. But yeah, that's how PlayStation's doing. Xbox is holding a showcase January 25th. This is going to be very focused. It is going to focus on games that are coming out within the next couple months. So the games that are being showcased is Redfall, Forza Motorsport, Minecraft Legends, and the Elder Scrolls Online's next expansion. The MMO that I think people forget exists, but is actually pretty successful given how long it's been out.
Solid player base.
Yeah.
Player contingent, player count.
I would say you could probably throw it in that like Destiny thing where it's like there's a decent amount of people in there. It's never going to spike to its like heydays, or it's never going to hit like Call of Duty levels for Destiny or Final Fantasy.
The game, they don't have high highs, but they don't have low lows.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just one of those MMOs that like Microsoft must be happy enough with it to give it a spotlight in the showcase. They did say that Starfield will be getting its own showcase. But there is also the caveat that this is 4 games coming out within the next couple months, and Starfield has only been promised for the first half of the year. So that this could give us a hint on Starfield being towards the end of that middle timeline for release. But Dave, I know like Redfall is probably the one thing you're focused in on this showcase.
And then I saw some stuff, and I'm gonna misquote it, but they said like there was an article with one of the lead developers or something that said it's not this game, it's more Far Cry. In terms of how they were talking about it, like as like a looter. Oh my
okay.
So I'd have to search that article while you're talking, but if it actually, the headline intrigued me a little bit more about it's less games as a service and more Far Cry. Now, when I say that, I'm also concerned because the first thing that jumped in my head when they said it's more Far Cry was broken co-op.
I don't think we'll get broken co-op. I think that's just like that is an Ubisoft problem.
Right. But I am all for, and I think you kind of are for this too, I think, a little bit over-the-top vampire story. Like, I'm kind of for that.
Yeah, I don't want a super serious one. I know it's going to be, multiplayer, but I hope it's more like a co-op experience.
Michael wants more Buffy, less Twilight.
Yeah, but also just like I'm worried about like how the multiplayer is going to break out because I don't want a games as a service situation. Which I don't think it will. I don't think so either. So. But I want more than just what we got for like Back 4 Blood and like World War Z. Like I'm pointing to the co-op zombie games. So there's a balance that I want that I think the studio can deliver on. And Microsoft must be confident enough because like when I mentioned the 4 games during this event, Redfall is clearly lined up to be the star of this because we just talked about Gran Turismo in terms of like, racing fans exist, but like I don't think Forza can be your showcase for this.
Yeah, so so the headlines are saying Redfall is more like Far Cry than Left 4 Dead.
Okay.
That's what Arcane is saying. So in terms of, I mean, I'm not. That's literally just me reading the headline. I'm not reading the article or reading what they said. But they're saying it has more in common with Far Cry, which I'm fine if you're going to tell kind of an open world style,
bunch of shit on the map,
sort
of thing could be interesting
like, with a linear story thing and some side quests to build on the world. Like I'm okay with that, as long as the stuff is intriguing. The side quest and the main story are intriguing enough for me to go, I want to know what happens next. Like, I want to go to the next dot. I want to go to the next thing. Like, as long as that's enough and the gameplay ties into it. You can love or hate Far Cries, but they're fun to play. They're
fun to play.
A little bit over-the-top weapons.
It's just the structure got tired in terms of, like, climb the tower, take over the area sort of thing, which I can see Redfall could end up in that camp of the site because you are clearing out zombies or as vampires, not zombies. So it could have some of those elements in it, but it at least has like science fiction fantasy mixed in with it, which like could end up working out if it goes with the Far Cry formula.
So I know you kind of hinted at it, but what's your feeling on Starfield being completely separate from this? And so I have a 2-part question for you. What's your feeling on Starfield being completely separate from this? And what's your feeling on the speculation on the internet that this director thing has been thrown together as a response to people being upset that they didn't show up at the Game Awards?
Okay, so Starfield not being there, I kind of get if Starfield's as big of an experience as they're promising, it needs its own showcase. It needs more than like 10 minutes or 15 minutes in a 45 to hour show. So I understand what doing Starfield, getting its own event, especially if Starfield is in like, it ends up getting into June for its release. Then I understand of like, hey, let's not showcase it in January if it's going to be 5 months out. So I understand that. I hope at the end of this, they at least give us a date for the Starfield event.
As packed as we just did it last week though, but as packed as February, March, and April are, I don't blame them for staying away.
Well, but then June is like a killer month because June is like the Street Fighter, Final Fantasy, or so like, Diablo.
Yeah, I feel like May and July right now might be the best windows. Early May, late April, early May, and then mid July. Yeah,
you wait till August, and you beat Madden to the kickoff of the holiday season or the fall. Like that would end up being probably the key thing for them. There's a second part of your question that I missed, if you remember.
Is this director's cut thing like a thrown together instantaneous response to the backlash they got for not being at the Game Awards at all?
I can see it being a little bit.
Because I remember I said at the end of the Game Awards, if they come out before the end of January and they talk, this is why they weren't at the Game Awards. I said that. I said if they were waiting until February or March to do something like this, then they should have done something at the Game Awards.
Yeah.
But if this January thing was always planned, this makes more sense for them being non-existent at the Game Awards.
Yeah, especially if what they're showing here sticks to just these 4 games. If they drop in like a random Hellblade trailer or a trailer for a new announcement, then I'm going to be like, oh, this is a reaction to the Game Awards in some capacity. But if it just sticks with like, hey, we are only focusing on games that are coming out soon, I can see why they weren't at the Game Awards. And I can also see why the Game Awards would be like, we don't want that. Like, we're not going to give you 5 minutes for Forza, and we don't have enough time to let you demonstrate Redfall outside of like a 90-second trailer.
We don't have time for you to show Redfall the way you are saying you want to show it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I definitely see, like, I could see them focusing on these 4 core games that they're saying they're going to focus on, and then I hope that we get some kind of cool Game Pass announcement somehow. I don't know what that would be, but something else coming to Game Pass in the immediate future. That's a kind of a surprise.
Yeah. Something, though. Like, I mean, they're dropping all the Persona games in like 2 weeks. They just announced a bunch of other stuff coming randomly. So yeah, they can totally see. This would be a perfect spot if the Activision deal was closed for them to be like, all the Call of Duty games are now on Game Pass.
Yeah.
But we're not quite at that level yet. But yeah, I could totally see them. When it comes to like Elder Scrolls Online, I can totally see them being like, all the expansions for the MMO are now on Game Pass. Because I think Elder Scrolls is like free to play right at this point.
Or Game Pass subscribers get a level boost thingy like they did with Riot. Is that Riot?
With Valorant. Yeah. Riot Games
Valorant, and then the other games too, though. The other like
League of Legends
them a bunch
got
of heroes.
Different legends and stuff. Yeah. So especially if they want to like continue Elder Scrolls Online and boost it any way they can.
Correct.
Because, like I said, Elder Scrolls Online it's never going to surpass like Final Fantasy XIV, but if it can continue to,
I don't think they're trying to either.
No, and I think so. But if they want to continue like to feed their base and maybe just inject it with a little bit more, like tying it in when Game Pass just a little bit, could end up doing really well for them. But let's talk about like a company not doing really well apparently. So Ubisoft, I guess they did a financial call earlier this week, and they're not doing good. Ubisoft is going through rough times during this economy. So there's several reasons for it. The first up, Mario and Rabbids didn't achieve the sales goals that they set. So they said it's really underperformed. And also, interestingly, Just Dance is also underperforming as well. And Just Dance has always kind of been their go-to thing. Ubisoft has basically said that it's due to the economy forcing players to go with more well-established franchises, which I would say just...
The hell is Mario considered?
I know, I would say like Mario...
and Just Dance.
And Just Dance are pretty established. But basically they're saying is like, because people are tighter with their wallets, they're kind of only going for like 1 or 2 big things at a time. And they're ignoring Mario and Rabbids and Just Dance. Though I would say Just Dance is So if you buy Just Dance in a store, it's only a download now. It's an empty case. I could see that being a little bit hesitant.
I think that crowd has just outgrown the game.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it had a preteen popularity window about 12 years ago. And that population is now out of college, establishing
it does
their
thrive on
lives
Twitch a lot.
Right.
But
because the people that aren't buying it anymore are still watching their other friends play it that are 3 or 4 years younger than them.
I also think just like because Just Dance now is like digital only, that does hurt it because they were still selling it on the Wii up until 2 years ago because it was just like physical disc. People have their Wii, they'll still buy it. But the Mario and Rabbids one kind of surprises me because. Well, it does and it doesn't. Because I feel like...
I hate this wording. Whose sales goal? What is the goal? And how many units did you sell?
See, the problem is with business is like Mario and Rabbids 1 sold this much. So we need to crush what it sold previously. And for all we know, it could be on par with the last one, but it's just not higher.
But at the same time, they didn't put a 2 with it. And we know statistically... things that are numbered and like a second one sell better, which is why we get sequels. But for some reason in the titles lately, they're going away from cycles. This is a fantastic game. If you own a Switch, I think you should play
picked
it. I
it
think
up.
you should play both of them. Yeah, I think you should play both of them. But if you don't need to play both of them. Like this is the better version. Than the first Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, or this is Sparks of Hope, right?
Yeah, Spark of Hope or Sparks of Hope. I forget exactly if there's a plural.
But I get that it didn't hit their expectations because it cost them X amount of dollars to do this partnership with Nintendo, and they didn't get the return on investment that they expected. Which seems to be the case for all of their games lately, not named Far Cry.
You know what also... I think Ubisoft has learned is... Or
Assassin's Creed, sorry.
Yeah. What Ubisoft might have learned... so I pay attention to Wario 64, Cheap Ass Gamer. I'm always looking to buy games. You often can get the first Mario plus Rabbids for like $10. Like in-store physical copy for $10. And if you're just buying a Switch and you see Mario, the first one, for $10 and the sequel for $60... or for $50, whatever it was, you're going to buy the first one. Regardless if there's a 1 or 2 on that box, you're going to buy the cheaper one.
Right. Yep.
And I think that plays in a factor to it, and that's also why Nintendo doesn't really put their shit on sale, like by much. Yep. Like you're not penalized.
You're buying a Switch for Mario, Zelda, Donkey Kong. Like that's what you're buying.
Yeah, and it's
for.
like, which $60 Zelda game am I going to buy? Because all of them are the same price still. So I wonder if that plays a factor into it, because the first game, Kingdom Battle, was the first one?
Yeah, sounds about right.
It's consistently at like $10. Like, and I think that could have a factor.
But it's also like 5 years old now, I believe.
Yes, which is why it's $10 consistently. Right. And that's just how Ubisoft is. Like, they'll keep a game in stores forever at a low price because they'll continue to sell. So I think that also kind of hurts them just a little bit. Not as much to like mess up their sales goals, but I don't know. I think it could be a factor.
Yeah. So the last 2 bullet points you have on here, Ubisoft is said to now be focusing on bigger brands to get them through these times. What the hell does that mean?
It means, so I think this
too little too late, homie.
Yeah,
like if you're gonna revert and try to rename a game or change the direction or cancel titles or and then those games won't come out for 3 or 4 more years.
And they canceled 3 unannounced titles
at the earliest.
So they canceled 3 things that they haven't announced yet, which I think this goes back to like 2 years ago during like the speaking out Me Too movement, where Ubisoft is like, okay, you know what? We're getting rid of a bunch of people, and we're going to re-look at how we design games. Because it was like a perfect timing for like they needed to get rid of people that were toxic, and also the work that those people were doing wasn't working financially for them. So they were like, let's just wipe the board, start fresh, and think of a bunch of new ideas. And I think they weren't ready for how long it takes to establish new ideas, which is why was it a couple months ago, they canceled 4 unannounced games. And then this year, they're canceling 3 more, which is basically them being like, shit, we don't have time to establish new things. So let's just focus on the big brands, which is Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, Far Cry, and Division.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, at this point in time, though, like they need to come out, and if this is true, then okay, we're working on another Division Warlords of New York style expansion. So like they need to say something like that, or similar to what they did with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where they said, okay, here's year 2 of content. But I mean, I don't know if it's in your if it's in this article at all, but there's no talk about Star Wars in here. There's no talk about Avatar.
There was a little bit talk of Avatar, of like it's still coming this year, but that's as far as the talk went, of like it's still due this fiscal year. Yeah,
and then Julian Garrity, who was the game director on Division 2 for a long time, has now been moved from Ubisoft Massive, has now been moved to the game director on the Star Wars franchise that they're doing. He tweeted something about this being a large year, and then he had to reiterate, essentially, based on that tweet, of it's not coming this year. But he sounds like that they're gonna, whether it's a bigger announcement or some type of reveal or something, but he had to pretty much kind of reiterate, like, hey, I was just kind of talking about how excited I am for 2023 to be working on this game, but the game's not coming in 2023.
Yeah. There was something that I was just seeing on Twitter. A couple insiders basically said that like Ubisoft was shopping themselves last year, and they went to a bunch of people and they put like they were laughed out of the door. Based on what they wanted. That's obviously like hyperbole, but it sounds like the sale.
You think you're cooler than you are.
Yeah, and basically now it sounds like Ubisoft, like for so long we're pushing like we're one big studio that is actually 20 studios, and we just all make like 2 or 3 games and every studio touches it. And now apparently that has scared off people from acquiring them, because it's just like, okay, so how many governments do I have to deal with? Like, how many?
You're a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, how many franchises do you have? Okay, how many people do you employ? And also, how many different governments do we have to work with for like labor things? And it sounds like Ubisoft now is...
How many tax returns do we have to file?
Yeah, and it sounds like that's like backfired. Like, it worked really well for Ubisoft for when they were pumping out Assassin's Creed games every year. But now that can't work anymore... they're in a tough spot, and I don't know what's going to happen.
You circle back to these acquisitions as you're saying that out loud. Okay, buying Bethesda. You bought the company out of Bethesda, Maryland. Like, that's where they are. I think maybe they have a studio in Texas, but Bethesda is in Bethesda, Maryland. Activision is in Southern California. Activision Blizzard. Bungie is in Seattle. It's not. They have a little bit of satellite stuff and some remote workers, but the main thing, like, there's so many, like, and I know this because I follow a bunch of Bungie people, but like Michael could get a job working remote for Bungie because he lives in Illinois. I could not because I live in Michigan. Yeah. So for whatever reason, the partnerships just whether it's the state of Washington's rules, Bungie's rules, I don't know what it is, but they don't have a partnership with my state like they do Michael's state.
Yeah.
So like, and that makes them easier, in my opinion, to acquire.
Yeah, and also when it comes to like how Xbox did it, they bought ZeniMax, and they haven't brought them fully into Xbox Studios. Xbox's event is Xbox and Bethesda event, because they're like, okay, Bethesda,
they're just another arm.
Yeah, Bethesda, you or ZeniMax, you handle all the Bethesda shit. Xbox will handle our shit. Activision Blizzard will handle their own shit, but it'll all feed into the same thing.
And as of now, we haven't heard of like Arcane helping 343 or 343 helping, any of these other a Bethesda studio. Like, we haven't, like, Obsidian's kind of doing their own thing, and like they might be helping some people, similar to how we haven't yet heard about Bungie helping other studios. Do I think that the thing's going on in the background and there's conversations happening and there's like video conferences or people traveling back and forth that are really good at one thing and really good at another thing, helping other studios? Yes, 100%. Do I think that Bungie is in collective development with a Sony studio on a game right now? No. Yeah.
But Sony is more strategic with their acquisitions, to where they do the homework of like, if we do bring you in and we do need you to work with someone else, it's possible. As opposed to like ZeniMax has no reason, or Bethesda has no reason to be like, hey, can we talk to Obsidian? No, they have Arcane in their same family. They have two different Bethesdas in their same family, so they can work there before they have to be like, hey, can we really need to talk to the Halo developers? Like, they don't have to do that because they have enough people in their side of the company that has that skill set.
This is why, acquiring and growing a company is easier than expanding than expanding.
Yeah.
When you expand, you dilute. Whether you believe it or don't believe it, you dilute. You take the assistant game director and make him a game director. Therefore, you hurt the studio that you took the assistant game director from, and the new studio you're creating, or the new thing you're expanding and giving somebody game director position that maybe can't handle it. You have now diluted both things that you're creating.
Yeah, well, it's like, hey, you're now the creative head of this studio. It's like, well, I got to build this from scratch, and then the other studio's like, shit, we got to replace this person, and Ubisoft is kind of learning that right now, where they expanded.
Well, I'm literally living that right now.
Yeah.
like I'm physically living that. I have a brand new location that's opening, and I have no staff.
Yeah.
So in my job, and I'm, and in order for me to, I'm hoping, I'm going to pull people from other things and other companies, which are technically going to dilute that company, temporarily or whatever. And I'm still taking a whim on, are they going to fit in the new thing?
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So, all right, this last bullet point.
Yes, we were just talking about this game last week.
Yeah. In addition, Skull and Bones has been delayed again, this time till fiscal year 2023-2024. I believe Ubisoft's fiscal year is April 1st
to April.
May 1st. Yeah.
I think
so
April.
This game is. I feel like this was initially forced to be out before the end of the 2022 fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why we got the March date for it. And now I feel like that it's not ready. And, obviously it's not ready. And I think it's because feedback around it has been negative. Again, 6 years later. Like, the feedback is still negative around it. I think it's fascinating because this kind of breaks my 90-day window thing.
Yes, and we were just talking about this last week in detail of they can't possibly delay it again. And it's like, no, they didn't. It's a big delay. It's either a really big delay or they're just going to drop this in the middle of summer and not talk about it. It's going to be like Roller Champions, or was it pre-orderable? So I feel like it was at one point, and then I couldn't find pre-orders, but I might be thinking of 2 years ago when it was up for pre-order, and then it was taken down.
I'm starting to get to the point where this is going to have to be free to play.
That's what I thought was going to originally happen. So you can pre-order it on GameStop.
How much?
$70.
Okay.
They still also have the original release date of March 9th.
Well, this news just came out today. I don't expect them to change their website in a day. So, this is scary. Like the more that this game gets delayed, the scarier this gets. This is crazy. Like, we're kind of getting to 50 or 60% Last Guardian time frame at this point in time from announcement to release.
If it makes it to next year, then I think we will be in that window for delays. Crazy. Which is wild. But another thing you have to factor in, all these delays are probably just making people not want to pick it up. Like, no one's like, okay, you know what? I got to see what this game finally looks like. It's going to be the point where people are going to stay far away from this because they're just like, it got delayed 6 times. We don't know what's going on with this game.
It was announced at E3 2017. That was the first time Ubisoft said Skull and Bones.
6 years? Okay, I'm going to Google too then. Last Guardian.
So we're getting there 6 years, and it's not dated yet. So.
No. Last Guardian was announced in 2009. And then Last Guardian came out in 2016. So 7 years. Yeah, it's going to be, if it makes it to 2024, it will be Last Guardian range. That's
crazy.
And Last Guardian turned out to be pretty good. So there's hope. Duke Nukem Forever didn't turn out to be good, but But this has to be
Well, I was starting to get personally worried, And I think you and I were kind of talking about this kind of off the record, and me saying it post-delay is not a big deal, but this is around the time we have a fantastic relationship with Ubisoft PR. This is around the time that I would play this game.
Yeah, either preview capacity or a review copy.
Yeah, 60 to 90 days. Like we would get a hands-on impression, whether it's a virtual session or years ago they would fly us out to San Francisco, and we get to mess with it and interview a developer. Usually about 2 to 3 months prior release date. So like this was concerning. So
this is going to either put the PR company in the point where they're either going to have to just drop this game out of nowhere, or they're going to have to rev up the PR cycle so hard for this and then get as many influencers you can on a pirate ship in the middle of the ocean to have an experience, just so people will talk about this game positively. Because now,
based on their earnings reports, though, they're talking about they're having a hard time, so they're not going to be able to back up the marketing train like they have years past.
But are they going to be forced in a situation where they have no choice but to put all of their eggs in a basket? The only thing that they have to hope, I mean, Assassin's Creed Mirage is supposed to be out this year. There's a chance maybe they looked at how many people that they needed on Skull and Bones to push that game out, and were like, it's not worth it. Let's delay that and pull some of these people into Assassin's Creed Mirage, because that will be worth it, but we need it out this year. Especially that's how Ubisoft works. Ubisoft is like dozens of studios that touch the same game. So they might have just had to pull bodies off this. And it's also probably why, the Prince of Persia thing was permanently, like indefinitely delayed, because they're just like, sorry, we need to make sure Assassin's Creed can sell this year. And then also, hey, Division Heartland is apparently going to be
I forgot about that.
A thing that's going to drop this summer.
The mobile game still doesn't have a release date.
Yeah. And like the last Rainbow Six game, Extraction, it didn't do anything. So Ubisoft's in a weird spot. Like I worry about Ubisoft in terms of like, some companies that seem like they're too big to fail in video games. Like I don't think EA will ever fail. I don't think Activision Blizzard will fail, though there's a chance. I don't think I can say that for Ubisoft. And that's kind of scary. Like, I don't look at Ubisoft and go, like, they can survive anything. Mm-hmm. Like, they need a game to come out and be a hit. Like, they can't deal with... This is going on, 2-3 rough years in a row? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if they can have a 4th and 5th year that are rough.
Yeah.
But
that's crazy. Yeah. It's just crazy. So, all right. So we're going to replace what we're playing and watching this week with our 2022 Game of the Year top 3. So we're going backwards when we do this. 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1.
Okay. All right. So I'll let you go first with number 3.
All right.
You're number 3.
All right. My number 3. This took a hell of a long time for me to decide. Dave, as you know, I make a top 10 list, and I'm constantly shuffling that top 10 list around. And my number 3 is Vampire Survivors. This is a game, it came out like back in January, and I just kind of ignored it because it was like, oh, that's just like one of those games that plays itself. Like, I don't really care about like automatic clicker games. And then as the year went on, more and more people were talking about this game, about how it's super addictive, how it is a game where the character does do the attacks for you, and you're really just maneuvering around. But the whole min-maxing really scratched like an itch for me. And in terms of just like pure gameplay, it is probably one of the more fun games that I played this year. And I wasn't really expecting it. And I'm glad we do our Game of the Year discussion now, because this is something I just started to play in December, and it immediately jumped to the top of my list because it's just really fun gameplay mechanics. The art is super interesting, sometimes really funny. The game has hell of a personality without giving you much story or anything like that. A lot of the personalities is just in the descriptions of the weapons and the enemy types. There's a bunch of little secrets in here. Anytime a game will get me to Google how to do a thing, or can I do a thing, or what am I supposed to do, will always like get points in my book for whatever reason. And this is one of those games where you can play this for hours just doing stuff and not know that there's like, oh, there's a secret here in this level that will lead you down a different path or unlock a different character. And it being something that was just on Game Pass randomly really helped. But also, I think it's only like a $7 game too, so it's not even an expensive game, and it is free to play on mobile as well. So it is definitely one of those games that caught me by surprise. And after we do our top 3, I might tell you about what's in the rest of my 10 just to piss some people off. But yeah.
Well, in a world where Marvel Snap was in the conversation for best game,
yes,
you know, like this is right in that wheelhouse of easy, accessible, pick up and play. You know, like this is, you know, like people don't have a lot of time. Their attention spans are vastly different now. Like this is hitting that niche that's out there right now, and I haven't even played it, but it's crossed into over to, you know, people are talking about it with that I know.
It was being cloned so much on mobile, the developers had to rush through to get the Android and iPhone version out because there were too many clones. Like that's how high this game hit. And the crazy thing is, it came out in like early access late last year, officially out on PC in January, and then no one kind of talked about it for a couple months, and then suddenly, like, I think it was the Game Pass effect when it hit Game Pass.
Yeah, Hades was kind of like that too, though, right?
It was an early access game that was on PC officially way before it hit the consoles. I think the Switch got it first, and then it was like several months later before PlayStation and Xbox got
it. But it was even a little bit of slow burn on the Switch, where people were more like, "Oh my gosh, like wow," you know, like it wasn't like the first couple weeks it was out. So like that's happening more and more, and that's what's so cool about the gaming genres that we're in right now.
And this is one of those games where if you look at it or read a description, you might not think it's that interesting, but I highly recommend playing it just because the game is pretty chaotic and entertaining as all hell. Where anytime I was playing it, and then like I would be like, Sarah, look at my screen, because a lot of shit's happening and you can't even tell, but I'm mowing through thousands of enemies with the weirdest weapons, and the screen just looks absolutely bizarre and crazy. And I was almost like, if this wasn't a pixel game, this would break my computer because the amount of stuff that it's trying to throw on the effects. So Vampire Survivors is surprisingly my number 3. And again, I'll tell the rest of my top 10 later, and you'll see why it's shocking it's made my top 3.
So for my number 3, I struggled with. I think I'm pretty comfortable with 1 and 2, but I struggled with number 3, going back and forth. But ultimately, it's Horizon Forbidden West, and that's edging out TMNT Shredder's Revenge, like just by like a millimeter. Turtles had a very nostalgic effect on me. You guys, most of the people that have been listening to the show know that I love Turtles. Like the Ninja Turtles, I've had an affiliation with them since I was, you know, an infatuation with them since I was a kid. I don't think that I'm entertained by most of the movies that come out by them, even if they're terrible. I still watch them. You know, and that kind of hit that modern gaming, but that nostalgia feel really well. But Forbidden West ultimately told a very great story on top of how close I was to playing Horizon Zero Dawn, almost back to back.
Which is why I thought this wouldn't make your top 3, because you played them back to back, and I figured you would be burnt out, but you enjoyed it enough to do that.
It still has. I mean, I've been the more like as you know, you and I talked about how we were going to do this, and I was looking through things and thinking about things, like some of the story aspects of it are still sticking with me. The way that the game ended and things that happened at the end of the game, like those things are still sticking with me, and those matter to me. Shredder's Revenge was a fantastic, fun 4-hour romp anytime I want to do it with a friend of mine or something like that, but it's not going to have. I'm not going to remember a vista or a scene in Shredder's Revenge as much as I am going to be with some of the relationships that were built in Horizon Forbidden West. So.
Okay. I'm Horizon, because you played it back to back, I was just like, I think that might be in your top 3, but I also could see you being like, I was burnt out by the time I got to the middle of Forbidden West. But
I was like, if you would have asked me to pick this in May or June, I probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But it had more time to kind of like resonate and to see.
Especially when you sit back and again, I think about what did I play this year. It popped up.
And I didn't finish God of War, and it's not God of War's fault. I changed jobs. It's a big game. But I think for me personally, it's very important for me to complete a game to be able to talk about it on my list.
Yeah,
to complete.
But especially if like you're talking about 16 hours into a game, because I think you got like 16 hours into God of War, and it's like yeah. But I'd say if it didn't capture you within 16 hours, it probably isn't going to bring you.
And that's the thing again. As I go back and think about it, was I wanted to come. I would play Horizon. I wouldn't necessarily want to stop, or I'd be like, okay, this is a good stopping point. I can pick this up tomorrow. I was kind of more planning. Like I only have an hour. Do I really want to start playing Horizon right now and get into a mission that I can't finish within the hour? So there was obviously I knew there was enough stuff happening in the game where I'm like, okay, I have 3 or 4 hours right now to sit down and play, versus I have 45 minutes. And I didn't do that with Horizon, and I'm not doing that with God of War, which is the main reason I haven't played it in like the last 4 weeks.
Yeah. All right. My number 2 is going to be A Plague Tale Requiem. So anyone who knows me knows that A Plague Tale is a very special game for me. The first one, Plague Tale Innocence. So A Plague Tale Requiem was probably my most anticipated game going into the year, and also the game I was most worried about in terms of it was being advertised of like, hey, it's a much bigger adventure, and the thing I thought made A Plague Tale Innocence so good is it was a relatively small adventure in terms of like how long it took to play, how focused the story was. It's like a 12-hour game. So all the hype going into Requiem about like, we expanded this thing, and also it's a bigger world, story is going to be much larger. I was really worried about it, but when it finally came out, I think we ended up beating it in a weekend, and it did everything I wanted it to do in terms of expanding the game, the world, the gameplay mechanics, but not forgetting about what it where it came from, basically. So seeing the story actually conclude, or what I feels like concluded, with still leaving a door open, the gameplay being satisfying, the length being, I think, just about right. It was about like a 16 to 18 hour game, which is exactly what I was looking for, in terms of the game didn't overstay its welcome. Everything in the story felt necessary. I never felt like it was dragging itself. And when it would take like a turn, I never once was dreading the turn. I feel like we're going to talk about God of War every other time we talk about a game, but there's parts in God of War where the game takes a turn and then I'm like, shit, we got to do this now. And I never kind of had that feeling in Requiem. Every time it's like, hey, we're doing this now, it felt of value. And I think that was so important for the game to not get caught up in like random bullshit. There wasn't a lot of like fetch questy things or collectible stuff. They're like, hey, you did this collectible in the first one, that collectible's back, and also we added a second collectible, but it didn't get crazier than that. And then story-wise, it just kind of hit different based on everything that was going on in like personal life and real life stuff. The story probably hit way more because of those circumstances, but it was one of those stories where I'd never want to really put the controller down. We finished it in like a weekend. Mm-hmm. It was one of those games that I think we stayed up till 6 a.m. to finish it one of the days during the weekend, because we were just like, no, we got to see it through. We got to finish this up. And it was so good. And I'm surprised I'm saying all this stuff and it's not my game of the year. But we'll get to that in a couple seconds. But yeah, A Plague Tale Requiem did everything I wanted it to do, and relieved any fears I had about it relatively quickly playing the game. It was after a couple hours of like, okay, I don't think they're going to mess this up. And then I continued on, and turns out they didn't. So Plague Tale Requiem is the runner-up for me.
All right, so my runner-up, my number 2 game is, ironically enough, Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I disclosure, I received this game as a review copy from Ubisoft, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was something that Owen could sit on the couch with me and see me play and ask questions, and I could talk to him. It's a game that Owen played, which is a big factor to me. Is trying to spend as much time with him as I can when he's as small as, as little as he is small. He's like a 7-year-old that's already like 4.5 feet tall. But it was, I felt it was fun to play. It did a great, told a good story. The difficulty at certain times was a little, like sometimes I felt a little over the top, but overall it was pretty good, pretty solid. Collectibles, similar to your point with like Requiem, like collectibles weren't like too much out of your way, but were rewarding enough to do so. And I feel like it had one of the coolest turn-based final boss battles that I can recall in a game in a long time. Like in terms of just how the last boss battle functioned, I was thoroughly like, this is really cool, and this is vastly different than what I had been playing. Not vastly different, but surprisingly different than what I had been playing the whole time. So like I really enjoyed that. I love Mario games, like growing up playing them and seeing all the characters, and then I don't have like a huge like attachment to Rabbids, but I feel like that they kind of like the writers and the directors, like they just did a really good job of inserting these two franchises together and having a good time, but at the same time making a game that's really fun to play.
Yeah, it seems like I haven't played it yet, but like in terms of like gameplay, it was like exactly what you probably needed in terms of like stress levels with like games. In terms of like a game that doesn't take itself too serious, like and you can play with Owen as opposed to
right, especially in that time where, I mean, as most of you kind of know, because I'm pretty transparent with stuff, but in that time where I was actively job searching, like and concerned for my company.
Yeah.
And my concerns for the company that I left have been validated this month.
Yes, they have. But I can see why Mario Rabbids was a nice escapism of this. Like, I'm just gonna play the silly Rabbids game, like with Mario characters. I could totally see
and
that.
It turned out to be really, really good. Like, in terms of like, it was silly, it was fun, it was over the top, but then it's like, okay, and I was having fun and I was laughing, but then there were certain times that I'd go into a battle and I'd start getting my butt kicked, and I'm like, I had to step back for a second. Like, okay, I got to think this through for a minute.
Which is exactly
it wasn't like
you want
it wasn't
from that.
It wasn't terribly hard, but I had to stop and I couldn't just blindly play through this. I'm like, okay, like I got to really make a interesting selection with my party here, and I got to really start thinking, okay, if I do this, they're gonna do this and this. So how do I, there was a little bit of a deeper, chess game going on there too, and it was fun.
Yeah, which sounds like that was
I really liked
that was an improvement over the first one, because I heard the first one's pretty steady cakewalk, and it sounds like it does at least ramp up a little bit. But it's not a crazy difficult thing, but at least that there's moments where it can challenge is like super helpful for that sort of experience. All right, so anything else to say about Mario and Rabbids before we get into our ones? All right. So my game of the year, which based on how all the game of the year award shows and outlets have been, is probably the most boring pick, but Elden Ring is my game of the year, which is something that I wasn't expecting, because as everyone knows, I don't like Souls games. I don't like Bloodborne. Sekiro never did anything for me. Demon Souls I've tried to play multiple times, and each time I get an hour in and I'm like, nah, I can't do this. But Elden Ring clicked for me to where I think I put about 70 or 80 hours into that game. And then I watched Sarah put about 100 hours into that game. And I was interested to see her playthrough because she was a different class and taking completely different choices. She was doing logical choices as opposed to how I play Elden Ring, where it was very illogical. So the fact that I was able to conquer like a majority of Elden Ring, like I'm going to be honest, didn't see credits in Elden Ring because the game is so damn long, but I still put some more time into this game than I put into any game this year. I put 70 hours into this thing, and then I watched someone beat it, like next to me, and be like, yeah, I'm going to watch you do everything that I just did plus some. So if you really look at it, I probably put like 200 hours into Elden Ring. Which is just wild to me because I don't like watching people play video games. I absolutely hate it. Like I can't really watch Twitch streams or anything like that. So the idea that I basically spent 200 hours with this game, which is something that I'm not into this genre, is just kind of wild to me. And I really do think Elden Ring is going to be a historically important game, just because the amount of depth in this game, not only from like gameplay, weapons, all that stuff, but just how intricate the open world is mind-blowing. And it basically is going to hurt any open world game that comes after it, because people are going to compare it to Elden Ring. Just like when Breath of the Wild came out, people were like, well, Zelda did this, why don't you do that? And same could be said about Red Dead 2. The amount of detail in Red Dead 2 kind of broke the open world genre for anything following it until Breath of the Wild came out. Might have got the timelines mixed up, but I think Elden Ring now is that next pillar, that next, checkpoint or whatever you want to call it, that people are going to go back to and are like, are we doing what Elden Ring did? And
yeah, it's the next. They set a new standard.
Yeah.
They set a new bar.
Yeah, and this is going to hurt future games. I mean, this might also ultimately hurt From Software.
Yeah, if they ever want to make a Bloodborne 2, it's got to be Bloodborne 2 meets Elden Ring.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what helps this game, like we talked about it a lot this year, in terms of like, this game is kind of the most approachable game, but also one of the most dense games that almost makes it unapproachable. But the fact that what pushed me from being someone who's played Demon Souls for 2 hours, like 3 to 5 times before, to someone who put 70 to 90 hours in it, and Elden Ring, is the open world nature of it. The fact that I never once ran into like a linear boss that I'm like, oh, I can't beat this, therefore I cannot progress the game. This was just like, oh, I can't beat this boss? Cool, there's hundreds of other ones that I can go do, and I'll come back to this one eventually. And then the amount of secrets in that game are just mind-blowing. Like, anyone who's played Elden Ring, the first time you go under the river is one of the coolest moments that I've experienced in a video game. And that moment, like, is something I don't think a game will be able to top anytime soon. And for those that don't know, when you go to under the river in Elden Ring, there's another open world that's almost the size of the map under the river. And it's just kind of mind-blowing when you're like exploring it and you're just like, it can't be that big. And then you realize like, no, this is pretty fucking big, and it's just hidden under here, that I don't even know if the game pushes you in a direction of like, hey, there's a thing under this river that you should go check out that's really cool. You could potentially play that game for several dozen hours and not find it, as opposed to me, who just randomly explored and I found it like within like 10 hours.
Right, which is also super, super fascinating, because if it's the same size as the overworld, that's a lot of resources they put in there. And usually games, when they do a lot of resources and a lot of things, they force you to see it.
Yeah. And it's like the overworld, it does grow over time, so it might be the size of the final overworld, but that first world that they give, that first section of the world they give you, is pretty huge. And like, me being dumb, I'm like, well, this is a pretty big world. And then every time that like I got under there, I'm like, there's another world under this world. And then as you play the game later and the map keeps getting bigger and more zoomed out, you're just like, how big is this fucking game? Is this, I don't know, Elden Ring, game of the year. My game of the year list is just crazy because of my top 3 being like 2 games I wasn't expecting to be on there. Let alone Elden Ring. I wasn't expecting to even buy it, but like, my friends are like, hey, we gotta play this, and then we'll all walk each other through it. And I was just like, maybe, but I ended up getting hooked on it to play it the most this year. And it's something I might still go back to. And the crazy thing is, if I go back to it, I'm restarting my character. And I'm going to just go from the beginning. Because it was that entertaining.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for me, again, similar to the right game, the right time, the right mentality, and a studio that I love, it's Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah.
I mean, the art style was just completely different. It's a break from what I had, like what I had pigeonholed myself into: third-person shooters, third-person action games, and first-person shooters. That tends to be like my, a lot of my MO. And I love Drinkbox Studios. I love Guacamelee 1. I love Guacamelee 2. I still highly recommend anybody that enjoys any kind of platformers plays those games. And Nobody Saves the World just went even higher over the top with like some of the build crafting, the funny dialogue, the story, the art style, the little bit of the level grind, and just putting a build together or messing around with the abilities and stuff that you unlock and just watching it work and just wiping out an entire room is super, super satisfying. And I talk about all the time of continuance, like wanting to see what happens next, or wanting to keep playing, or just one more try, and this game fit that node every single time.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those games that I feel like you were going into it, you're like, I'm really excited for this game, and it did everything you wanted it to do. Similar to how I was with the Plague Tale, where like you wanted specific things from this game, and not only did it give it to you, it exceeded any expectations that you had. Is pretty impressive. And also, this is a game that came out in the beginning of the year. So like you're always talking about people don't remember the stuff from the beginning of the year, and 2 of your games are from like the beginning of the year. Which shows you how much they stuck.
The end of the year just wasn't great.
yeah, it wasn't the most consistent. It's
also like I have friends that have played and beaten Nobody Saves the World. Some of it was because I was playing it, I was streaming it, or I recommended it, or people are like, hey, what, again, I'm not trying to circle back to Game Pass, but hey, I just got an Xbox, I got Game Pass, like what should I check out? Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah, but also weren't you considering like I might pick it up on a Switch and play it again there, and then you were thinking about getting the trophies potentially?
Yeah, I could. I mean, I think I know it's out on PlayStation now for sure. And then I actually think there is some kind of DLC that I need to look at that because it's getting ready to leave Game Pass, and I might just need to buy it on Xbox so that my saves carries over.
Yeah.
Because I think I save like a certain percentage before it comes off Game Pass. So now that I'm saying that out loud, I might have to check it out.
Your save will be fine, Dave. But I see you want to at least own it.
Yeah. But then it's their Drinkbox Studios is getting to that point with me where I'm gonna buy or play whatever they release.
Yeah, they're like super giant games with me. Where the Hades developers, they will release a game, I'm picking it up.
Or I mean, Naughty Dog's on par with that for me right now.
Yeah, that's
too.
your
The next
AAA
thing that Naughty
equivalent.
Dog brings out. Yep, I'm buying whatever Naughty Dog is making, and if you would have asked me like 5 years ago or 6 years ago when Guacamelee came out, that would have been something that's probably in that franchise is probably in my top 10 franchises. Like no way.
Yeah.
Like so they just do a fantastic job, and I just wish they can make games more often, faster.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, overall in my list, I mean, if I had to finish, like number 4 would be Shredder's Revenge. Number 5 would be Witch Queen. Whether people want to roll their eyes or not roll their eyes, Witch Queen, I think, just as the story, I'm just talking about Witch Queen itself, not Destiny seasonal content. Just the Witch Queen campaign was definitely an homage to people that have been playing Destiny since the beginning. They did a really, really good job with things like that in it. Witch Queen would be high on that list. Going through my list, I think probably one of the coolest games that I like, one of the best looking games that I think that I played or that we played, Bright Memory Infinite.
I still don't understand why you were like fascinated by that game, because that game was terrible.
The game was terrible, but it looked cool.
Yeah, I mean, pictures look cool, but doesn't mean that they make good video games.
No, I'm not saying it's a good video game.
Yeah.
I just said it was one of the coolest looking games I played in 2022. I just enjoyed it because it was less time than it takes to watch a movie.
Yeah, I think you were just into like, I just beat a game in 2 hours. Yeah.
So yeah, like those things were great. Like I overall it was just a very average year in gaming for me with 2022. I think I beat 7 or 8 games. So
yeah, like new games that came out this year. Yeah. Yeah, for me, like if I round out my top 10, like number 4 is Stray, which Stray was number 1 on my list until I played Elden Ring, Plague Tale, and Vampire Survivors.
I need to play that.
Yeah,
I just need to.
It's like a 4-hour game. I think you can get through it.
No, I just need to do it.
My number 5 is Shredder's Revenge. Shredder's Revenge was really good, and it wasn't until I like tried to play the Cowabunga collection like a couple weeks ago that I was just like,
it came out like today, like on Netflix games. Like I think you can play it on your phone.
You can play it on your phone now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is such a good game with an amazing soundtrack. The rap song for the final boss is just great. And honestly, if they wouldn't have spoiled the soundtrack, it probably would have had more impact and might have like been like something. I'm like, I remember this.
But they use the soundtrack as a selling feature.
Yeah. And like it probably ended up taking it down a notch or two, because if that would have been such a great surprise, it would have stuck with me more. My number 6 was Ragnarok, which I'm surprised with, because I want to say the first God of War was like my runner-up for Game of the Year, with Spider-Man being number 1. I was looking forward to Ragnarok. It just kind of dragged too much for me. Then I have Rumbleverse in there, Sifu,
nice.
Immortality, and then Overwatch 2, which shouldn't be in my top 10 because it wasn't good, and it was basically me playing Overwatch 1, because it's like 90% Overwatch 1. But there just wasn't a lot of games this year that could round out top 10 for me. Though I am missing games that I just haven't played yet, but I don't see them really getting into my top 10, even if I played them. Like Midnight Suns, didn't play it. I doubt Midnight Suns would have broken into like my top 5. So yeah, that is what the rest.
And
of
I don't think when it came out until the year ended, I think if you played it all day, you still wouldn't have been done with it from what I'm hearing.
Possibly not. Yeah.
So, all right. So please, we've asked the question on Facebook, and it's in Discord or on Twitter as well. A couple people responded, but let us know what your best game of 2022 was. I'll put the caveat in there. Michael might roll his eyes at me, and I don't really care. But it doesn't even have to necessarily have came out in 2022. What was the thing that you enjoyed the most, or you had the most fun playing in 2022?
If you have a game that came out 10 years ago and you happen to play it this year, it counts. That counts.
Yep. Awesome. Yes. Bonus, maybe you get like an extra thumbs up if it's this year or something. But ultimately, I think that we're getting ready. I feel like 2023 is going to be a pretty solid year. I'm starting to kind of put a list together of stuff that I need to play. Like we just mentioned, Stray's on that list. I feel like both Plague Tales are on that list, high on that list for me. I obviously am excited for Lightfall, for Destiny Lightfall that comes out in February. But there is one or two things I want to try to get completed before Lightfall, because then I figure I'll probably, at least a month or 6 weeks of my time will be spent on Lightfall. So I would love to get, maybe in my mind, I'd love to get like Ragnarok done and maybe both Plague Tales done before Lightfall at the end of February.
It's doable.
We'll see. And then maybe after Lightfall, I'll jump into Midnight Suns. At that time, it'll probably be like $20 by then.
I'm hoping that price is holding up way longer than I thought it was going to hold up.
I saw it for like $36 on Green Man Gaming.
I don't want to play it on PC. I'm weird.
I do actually. Yeah. Why don't you want to play it on PC?
I just kind of prefer, even though I can play it with a controller. I just for whatever reason,
you just want to be on the couch with your feet on the ottoman or something.
No, I'm probably going to play it at my desk, which is the dumb thing. I just kind of like having stuff on my Xbox or my PlayStation. It's weird. It's dumb. Okay. It's like me being an old man collecting physical copies of games now. I'm just like, I just want it a certain way.
Hippie.
Yeah. I'll play like the most random indie game on PC. Like I'm playing Vampire Survivors on PC.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
It's probably. I would say it's probably going to run best between PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. I think Midnight Suns might run best on PC.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, no, it does. But it's something weird with my head to where like I consider my Xbox and PlayStation digital games as forever. I don't consider my PC stuff as forever. Okay. I don't know why.
I automatically want to think about like and I try to. It's always one of my goals every year, and I don't ever really do it, but I really want to try to commit to it this year, like diligently commit to it this year. I look at Midnight Suns, I look at Gotham Knights as games that if I buy it, like I bought Gotham Knights on PC, I want to buy Midnight Suns on PC because I want to stream. Mm-hmm. And it's way easier for me to stream. I don't have to bring my console down here. I don't have to do any of that. So, and that's part of the reason I'm just trying to justify this PC that I bought, but that has also made recording way, way easier.
Yes.
Aside from whatever's going on with my microphone this week. So, but yes, please let us know what you enjoyed playing in 2022. As everyone knows, at DDG platform is irrelevant. Does not matter. If it's Marvel Snap, great. If it's Vampire Survivors, great. If you just this week have a Netflix subscription and didn't have Game Pass and want to try out Shredder's Revenge and you want to play it on your phone and that's your game, awesome. wherever you're doing and however you're having fun and whatever game you're playing. Kudos to you and whatever you need to do for to get your entertainment value. It is judgment free here for sure. So that is all that I have. We'd love to get a spark of new questions going into 2023. So if you start thinking of any questions, please send them to us. We can start refreshing the document. They don't have to be gaming related. They could be just about anything.
Hey, it could be about Saudi Arabia buying the WWE is a possibility. Someone was asking about that, but I'm
sure that's going to be on the list, and we're maybe by the time we record next week, there'll be a little bit more stuff.
That's what I'm hoping for. Like I could rant for 10 minutes, but it might mean nothing next week. So
because I think Stephanie resigned.
Stephanie resigned, and then later that night, there's rumors that Saudi Arabia has bought the company. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, so maybe that'll be we'll start having similar to Xbox Activision deals. We'll start having this week in WWE merger.
Yeah, we might have to do that. Me and Dave are gonna be recording a Patreon episode later this weekend. I'm actually gonna potentially be recording a very silly episode with Chris Penwell as a bonus episode relatively soon. So there's gonna be stuff on the feed.
Yeah, anytime I can take a month off, I'll take it. So, all right. I hope everyone has had a great new year. I know, this is the second episode of this year, but I hope you had your 2023 is starting off great. I hope that you have some, gaming goals, as well as sending us what you enjoyed playing last year. Send us what your aspirations are for your gaming goals for this year. Stefan Wren has like a 10 platinums this year because he's psychotic. In terms of trophy collecting and stuff like that. He doesn't realize that he's gonna buy an Xbox and get delayed by Starfield tremendously. But I hope you have a great 2023. I hope everybody had a great holidays, and keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick. See ya.